Now, the title of my ceremony is Jesus, the Author and Finisher of Our Faith. Now, past few weeks, Pastor Roldan is actually preaching on the series of faith. And he used a very simple but elegant analogy last two times when he preached to explain a concept that is often very easily misunderstood. I misunderstood that concept quite often. So he likened each and every one of us to a table lamp. And each table lamp comes with a power cord, right? So the power cord, he likened it to a measure of faith, which you can find in Romans 12:3. Each of us is given a measure of faith. Some can have a longer measure of faith, some can have a shorter measure of faith. And then he likened Jesus into an extension cord. And then he said something very interesting, which sounds almost controversial, but he said, it's not about the measure of faith that you have, it's about upon whom you place your faith. You could place this faith upon your own self, or you can place this faith upon Jesus, and that's what matters the most. Now, when you listen to this, it sounds like no-brainer, right? None of us ever would say, as a Christian, that we place our faith upon ourselves. I can go across the room here, and all of you genuinely, with 100% confidence, say, no, I have faith in Jesus, not in my own self. That's what I say that too. But it's often not the case. We always, most of the time, place our faith as a Christian upon our own selves. Especially that is the case for myself. Because the difference is very subtle. We always think that, Jesus is the author and finisher of our faith, but most often time, in my life at least, I saw how I relied upon myself. All the time I was trying to increase my faith from the size of a mustard seed to a coconut seed. That's all I was trying all the time. So as I was thinking about this, and I thought, I should read a little bit more and figure out, how I can not place faith in my own self. But, make sure that I place my faith only in Jesus. And, when you think about faith in the Bible, the first person to come to mind is Abraham, because he's the father of faith. But I wanted to find out people in the Bible that have little faith. And the first one to come to mind when you think about little faith is Peter. Peter tried to walk on the water, and he lost sight of his faith, and he was started to drown. And then Jesus called him, "O ye of little faith," and he pulled him up. So I thought, let me look at the life of Peter. You can segment Peter's life into three parts: Simon the fisherman, and then Peter the disciple, Peter the apostle. And I quickly go over the resume of each of these segments of his life. When you look at Simon the fisherman, he was the brother of Andrew. He's married. And in Luke chapter 5 and 4, so you can see, he was humble and he knew he was a sinner. In John chapter 1, 35 to 42, he might have followed John the Baptist. When you read it, it kind of seems like he might have followed John the Baptist before he followed Jesus Christ, but, we're not sure. But the interesting thing is, he's a fisherman in the Sea of Galilee. Now, this is the picture of Sea of Galilee. It's not a big lake. It's 13 mile long and 8 mile wide. And, when you think about Great Lakes here, it's a tiny lake. But it is known to have storms that are violent. And in those days, to be a fisherman is a risky job because your equipment is rudimentary, right? Like primitive equipment. You have this boat that has no motors, and it can easily, sink, and you don't have any equipment to catch the fish, pull them. It's a manual labor, physically daunting and very challenging. You could live longer being a shepherd or a farmer. Why risk being a fisherman, right? You don't have weather systems, you don't have any weather alerts, you don't have Coast Guard. You can die anytime if a storm comes. So these men, to be fishermen in those days, have to be bold men. They had to be physically really strong men. And in those days, fishermen are rugged, they're unkempt, they didn't dress well, they didn't speak well, they always cursed. You can see that in the life of Peter too. At the same time, you can also see he's a religious man. He's not all, bad person. He's a religious man. He has this desire for God. And then he's a zealot. Luke chapter 6:15 says, zealots are these people that didn't want Roman occupation in their country. Now, when you go to Peter the disciple, his resume is very impressive. He's among the first disciple to be called. He left everything, his family, his profession and everything, and followed Jesus as soon as Jesus called him. He was the eyewitness for many miracles of Jesus. He even walked on water with Jesus. He witnessed transfiguration of Jesus. He was one of the 3 closest disciples to Jesus, and he is the first one to declare that Jesus is the Messiah. He seems to understand the purpose of Jesus' mission. But you also see some stuff. He's brash, talkative, impulsive person. He lost faith while walking on the water. He rebuked Jesus. How dare you do that, right? He did it. And he drew a sword and tried to cut off the ear of the disciple of the servant of high priest. And when you look at Peter's life as an apostle, he's the first to preach after Pentecost, right? He's the first to preach for Gentiles. He willingly suffered persecution, imprisonment, and beatings, and he rejoiced that he's worthy to suffer disgrace for Lord's sake. This is a great resume if you think about it, But I want to focus on one particular aspect of Peter's life, especially between the disciple, Peter the disciple, and Peter the apostle. Now, this one situation brings some understanding, especially it brought some understanding into my mind about this self-reliance versus reliance on God. Now, let me turn to Matthew chapter 26. Now here, Jesus is preparing his disciples for his crucifixion. And in 26 verse 31 he says, You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I'll strike down the shepherd, and the sheep and the flock shall be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. Now, he is preparing, as a good shepherd, all his, disciples about what is going to happen. And then Peter said to him, even though all may fall away because of you, I will never fall away. Because we know what happened later on, we doubt his intentions. But honestly, I believe Peter was 100% genuine when he said this statement. He never thought, even in the slightest, that he would ever deny Jesus. That's exactly how today I behave. I would never think I would deny Jesus. I would never think I would ever do something like that. Jesus in his mercy said, no, I'm telling you, truly I say to you, this very night before a rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter knew that Jesus is the Son of God. He saw him transform into divine. He should have believed him, but he said, no, you don't know something about me. I know more about myself than you do. And he starts correcting Jesus. He says, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And all disciples followed and then said the same thing. We might laugh at it, but this is exactly how most often I behave. It's not that Jesus is directly asking me or Jesus is directly communicating with me, but many situations might change, but the concept is the same. I always believe that I have something in me or a measure of faith in me that would make sure I would always rely on Jesus, but often the case it's not the thing, So this is exactly what Peter was trying to do. He believed he has some special insight into himself that would make sure and guarantee that he would never deny Jesus. And we know afterwards, Peter denied 3 times. First he denied politely, then he denied with an oath. 3rd time he denied with curse. And even before he finished talking, rooster crew, and then the Lord looked at him, Jesus looked at him, and then Peter realized, he remembered the word of the Lord that he told him, before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. So then later on, Jesus was crucified and he was resurrected. He showed himself to all the disciples, and they were at the Sea of Galilee. And then Jesus says, oh, just put the net this side, they catch a lot of fish. And by the time they came to the shore, Jesus already prepared some breakfast for them, and then they all sat together and ate. After eating in John 21, Jesus asked, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you, Peter replied. Then he asked the same question again. Peter answered the same thing again. And Jesus asked the 3rd time the same question again. This time it grieved him, because Jesus is forcing him to confront his own weakness. And then the answer is somewhat slightly different. It says, Lord, you know all things. You know me better than I know myself. Previously, he knew for sure he would never do that. He was so confident that he's someone that wouldn't deny Jesus. But here, when Jesus pushed him, he was like, Lord, you know all things. You know how weak I am. You know how I'm going to deny you. I don't have what it takes to love you. But you know that I love you. This is where Peter realized how ridiculous it is to believe in himself. Unless experiences like this happen to us, we will never truly distrust ourselves. We keep trying at it. We keep hitting at it. God, in his great wisdom and mercy, grants us these experiences like the way he granted Peter this experience. You think you will do it, and then you go at it, you push really hard with all you got, and then you utterly fail. You don't even realize you failed. And then you realize how weak you are. You can take any biblical character. For example, take Saul, who became Paul. He believed so much in his intellectual ability and the intellectual understanding of the scriptures, and he thought Jesus is not Messiah. He went so hard against him. He killed all the Christians. But when Jesus showed up on the way to Damascus, he was utterly disappointed in his own intellect. You can think about Jacob. Jacob believed in his ability to marry and to make children and to make all this property and wealth and everything. And when God was wrestling with him that night, he realized he couldn't overpower God. Then he gave up. And then he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. You can think of any biblical character in the Bible. You look closely. They all try so hard in their own ability. But when God in his mercy grants these experiences and breaks our pride, our ego, then we fall and then say, I will not let you go unless you bless me. This is the experience I needed all the time, because just like how Peter even forgot the very same thing that happened a few hours ago, I keep forgetting this stuff. And when situations come in my life, when they scare me, I keep devising plans. How can I handle this one? How can I overcome this one? Forgetting that the only way anything could happen in my life is through Christ. Even Ellen White talked about it. She said, the Lord Jesus imparts all powers, all the grace, all the penitence, all the inclination, all the pardon of the sin in presenting his righteousness for man to grasp by living faith, which is also a gift of God. Even the faith that we have is a gift of God. There is no merit in me to claim the salvation of Jesus Christ. There is no merit in me to claim anything for that matter. All is Christ. My life should not reflect myself. It should only reflect Christ. If it is reflecting something of me, then I am at the wrong side. And I need experiences like Peter to thoroughly destroy my own ego, my own confidence in myself, so that I would fall down and then say, only you. Jesus finally put it nicely in John chapter 15:4. Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit on itself unless it abides in its vine. So neither can you unless you abide in me. He repeats again, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, I in him, he bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. He goes on to say, if you don't abide in me, he's thrown away as a branch dries up, and they gather them and cast them into the fire, and they're burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it'll be done for you. This is no brainer. We always think that we abide in Jesus. But I looked at my own life. How easily I can slip away in abiding in Jesus. How easy it is for me to lose sight of Jesus. We never intend to be that way, but that's exactly what happens. There must be some sort of intentionality in us to abide in Jesus, to look at Jesus. If you look at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, Paul talks about this. The chapter 11 is all about hall of faith, all these people that are heroes of faith in the Bible. And right after that chapter, he says, therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily enslaves us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. And here is the big thing. Looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. Now, Jesus is the author and the finisher of our faith. I got nothing to do with it. He got everything to do with it. All I have to do is just look unto him. Look unto him. It sounds so easy, right? It sounds so easy. It is easy. He made it the most easiest thing to do. He will make sure your faith matures. He will make sure you will win victory over your sin, your bondages, your sufferings, all that you're going through. Sometimes he chooses not to deliver you from something. That's up to him. Because he knows the best about you. You even don't know about yourself. That's what we saw in the story of Peter. Peter didn't know about himself that Jesus knew about himself. I have to realize God got the best interest in his mind for my life. And I should be constantly looking at him and trusting in him and believing that he is the author and the finisher of my faith. There are several things in our life, right? This is the last slide. There are several things in our life that attract attention. For example, you can take noble things like social justice causes. You can pick one. Let's say maybe cleaning the place or, feeding the hungry. Even that can make you look away from God. You can think about politics. It's a noble cause, but even that can take your attention away from God. You can think of entertainment. It's an entertainment. You're just relaxing, but that could take away your attention from God. Facebook can take away your attention from God. Your own work, your money making to live and sustain yourself can take away your eyes from God. So all I have to do is have some intentionality. I don't want to drift away in the ocean, not knowing where I'm going. But all I have to do is look at Jesus and have some intentionality in abiding with him, in learning more about his character, learning more about his nature, and constantly communicating with him. That doesn't mean you have to pray 20 hours a day and then read 5 hours a day Bible. No. Reality is most of us suffer to have a simple prayer in the morning and to read 15 minutes Bible. That's the struggle that we have. If we just do 5 minutes prayer, then 5 minutes Bible reading, intentionality, probably contemplate something, it would be fine. But that's the problem, for me at least. I make myself busy with everything else, and in the end, I lose sight of Jesus. So today, I am challenging myself. This is called for myself more than you. That I know that Jesus is the author and finisher of my faith. He knows my weaknesses and my strengths more than I do. He will make sure I run the race with endurance. All I have to do is look unto him. When there is a doubt, when there is a fear, when there is something that I don't understand, look unto him. So I invite you, along with myself, to look unto Jesus and have this intentional life so that we be transformed more like him, like how Peter was transformed from a disciple into an apostle.